Hey Reddit, throwaway account here because I really don't want anyone I know stumbling across this. I'm not even sure why I'm posting, maybe I just need to get it off my chest, or maybe I need a reality check. Anyway, here goes. My name's Jake, and I've been married to Emily for 8 years. We met in college, bonded over our love of bad horror movies and craft beer, and got married a few years after graduating. We've got a 6-year-old son, Ethan, who's the light of my life. On the surface, our life looked pretty solid, decent house in the suburbs, steady jobs, family BBQs on the weekends. But lately, something's felt off. Emily's always been a social butterfly, which is one of the things I loved about her. She could walk into a room of strangers and walk out with 10 new friends. But in the past few months, she's been out a lot more, girls' nights, happy hours with coworkers, yoga retreats. I didn't think much of it at first, she's always been the type who needs her space, and I trusted her. But looking back now, there were signs. Subtle things. For example, she started guarding her phone like it was the nuclear codes. She'd take it into the bathroom, sleep with it under her pillow, and if I even glanced at it while it buzzed, she'd give me this sharp look, like I was invading her privacy. There were new outfits too, sexy ones she hadn't worn for me, and lingerie I hadn't seen before. When I joked about it, she laughed it off, saying she was rediscovering herself. I wanted to believe her. That's the kind of guy I am, I guess. Always assuming the best. Always giving the benefit of the doubt. But lately, I've been wondering if that just makes me a fool. It all started to hit me one evening about a month ago. Emily had texted me that she'd be home late because she was having dinner with some coworkers. It wasn't unusual, her job at the marketing firm involved a lot of networking, and I'd gotten used to her after-hours events. I didn't think twice until Ethan asked me, "Why doesn't mommy have dinner with us anymore?" That hit me like a punch in the gut. I realized he was right, Emily had been out a lot lately. It wasn't every night, but it was often enough for a 6-year-old to notice. So, I did what any rational person would do, I told myself it was nothing and tried to shrug it off. I didn't want to be that paranoid husband who overanalyzes everything. Still, it planted this tiny seed of doubt that I couldn't quite shake. That night, Emily came home late, like she said she would. She smelled like wine and had this flushed, overly cheerful vibe about her. She gave me a quick kiss on the cheek and went straight to the shower. While she was in there, I noticed her phone on the counter. Now, I've never been the kind of guy to snoop. I hate the idea of it, it feels like a betrayal of trust. But something was gnawing at me, and before I even realized what I was doing, I'd picked up her phone. It was locked, of course, but a preview of a text popped up on the screen. It was from someone named Ashley. It said, "Can't wait to see you again. Tonight was amazing. Kiss mark." My stomach dropped. Ashley? Emily didn't have any close friends named Ashley that I knew of. And what was with the kiss emoji? I told myself it was innocent. Maybe it was just a flirty friend being weird. Or maybe it was a misdirected text. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. I put the phone down before she came out of the shower and acted like everything was normal. She didn't mention her night at dinner, and I didn't ask. Instead, I stayed up late replaying the whole evening in my mind, trying to convince myself it was nothing. But that seed of doubt. It was growing roots. Things escalated a few days later. Emily had another late work meeting, and I was alone with Ethan again. I didn't want to project my stress onto him, so we had a movie night. But the whole time, my mind was elsewhere. I texted Emily around 9 p.m. to ask when she'd be home. She didn't reply for almost an hour, which wasn't like her. When she finally did, she said, "Just wrapping up. Be home soon. Love you." Something about it felt off. Wrapping up, from where? I knew her office was only a 20-minute drive away. If she was still there, why was it taking her so long to reply? That's when I decided to check her location using the family tracking app we'd both installed ages ago. It wasn't something I'd ever thought to do before, but the doubt in my mind was becoming unbearable. Her location showed she was at a bar across town. Not her office. Not anywhere near her office. A bar. My heart sank, but I still tried to reason with myself. Maybe it was a last-minute work thing. Maybe her coworkers had decided to grab drinks after the meeting. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I called her, trying to sound casual. "Hey, just checking in. You still at work?" There was a pause, too long of a pause, before she replied. "Yeah, just about to leave now." She was lying. I knew it, and she didn't even hesitate to say it. My stomach churned. "Really?" I asked, keeping my voice as steady as I could. "Because I just checked your location, and it looks like you're at the green door." The silence on the other end was deafening. I could hear faint noise in the background, music, laughter, glasses clinking. She finally said, "Oh, yeah. We came here after work." I didn't think it was a big deal. I wasn't buying it, but I didn't push further. "All right. Let me know when you're on your way home." When we hung up, my hands were shaking. I felt like my whole body was on fire, adrenaline coursing through my veins. That was the first time I really started to feel the weight of betrayal, even though I didn't have the full picture yet. She came home an hour later, smelling like tequila and wearing the same fake, cheerful smile as before. I didn't confront her that night, but I knew in my gut that something was seriously wrong. After that night, I started paying closer attention to Emily's behavior. I didn't want to believe she was capable of cheating, but the inconsistencies were piling up, and her explanations weren't adding up. For one, she became even more protective of her phone. I'd never cared about her having a passcode, everyone does these days, but now, she seemed downright paranoid about it. She'd keep it face down on the counter, and if I even walked into the room while she was using it, she'd lock it instantly. Her work meetings became more frequent, and she started going out on weekends too, claiming it was team bonding or catching up with old friends. I wanted to trust her, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being played. The breaking point came when I noticed her wearing a necklace I'd never seen before, a delicate gold chain with a tiny heart pendant. It wasn't flashy, but it stood out because Emily isn't the type to splurge on herself without making it a big deal. "Nice necklace," I said casually one morning. "When did you get that?" She hesitated, just for a second. "Oh, this? I bought it on sale last week. Thought it was cute." I nodded, but alarm bells were going off in my head. Emily loves a good sale, but she also loves showing me every little thing she buys. She would have texted me a photo of it or at least mentioned it. Later that day, I went on our shared bank account to check if there was any record of her purchase. Nothing. Not even a single charge from the store she claimed she'd gotten it from. That's when it hit me, someone else had bought it for her. The thought made my stomach turn, but I still wasn't ready to confront her. I needed more proof. I couldn't live with the constant doubt anymore. It was eating me alive. I decided I needed real proof, not just suspicions and red flags. That weekend, Emily had another one of her girls' nights, which conveniently didn't involve any of the friends I actually knew. After she left, I sat there for a while, staring at her phone on the counter. She'd rushed out so quickly that she hadn't taken it with her. My heart was racing as I picked it up. The passcode was a hurdle, but I guessed it on the second try. It was Ethan's birthday. I wasn't sure whether to feel guilty or justified as I opened her messages. But as soon as I saw her texts, I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. There it was. A long string of messages with someone named Ryan. The texts were graphic, explicit, and left no room for misinterpretation. They talked about how much they missed each other, how amazing the sex was last time, and how they couldn't wait to see each other again. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely scroll. Ryan, you looked so hot in that red dress the other night. I couldn't stop thinking about ripping it off you. Emily, you should've, winky face. Next time, no waiting. I felt sick. It wasn't just the physical betrayal, it was the way she talked to him, like he was the center of her world. The woman I'd married, the mother of my child, was pouring her heart and body into someone else. There were photos too. Nothing fully explicit, but enough to make my blood boil. Selfies in lingerie I'd never seen, sultry poses, flirty captions. This wasn't just some fling, she was emotionally invested in him. And then I found the kicker, a photo of them together at the Green Door, the bar she'd lied about. Her head on his shoulder, both of them grinning like teenagers. She hadn't just been careless, she'd been brazen. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the screen, my world crumbling around me. When she got home later that night, I was waiting. Emily walked in that night, all smiles and tipsy from whatever she'd been drinking. She didn't even look at me right away, just tossed her keys onto the counter and kicked off her shoes. It was like nothing was wrong. I sat there, holding her phone, my heart pounding in my chest. It felt like my whole world was hanging on the edge of this one moment. As soon as she looked up and saw me holding her phone, her face froze. "Jake," she started, her voice suddenly small. I didn't waste any time. I didn't want to drag this out. "Who's Ryan?" Her eyes widened, and she took a small step back. Her usual confidence, the way she could talk her way out of anything, vanished in an instant. "What are you talking about?" she stammered, but the panic in her eyes told me everything. I didn't give her a chance to lie. I tossed the phone onto the table, showing her the texts and pictures. Her face went pale as she looked at the screen. I can explain, Jake. Please, just let me explain." I couldn't stop the anger from bubbling up, my voice shaking. "Explain what? How you've been fucking someone else behind my back? How you've been sending him pictures of yourself? No, not just pictures, you've been talking about him like he's your goddamn boyfriend." She opened her mouth, but no words came out at first. Then, she started with the usual defense mechanisms, the denial, the deflection. "It's not what it looks like, Jake. It's just a flirtation. I didn't mean for it to get out of hand. You don't understand, okay? I was feeling so neglected, so trapped. And Ryan, he made me feel seen. He listened to me. You don't talk to me the way he does. You haven't for months." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was blaming me, twisting this into something I had done wrong. "So it's my fault. Is that what you're saying?" I shot back, barely able to control the rage in my voice. "You don't think you bear any responsibility for lying to me, for sneaking around behind my back?" She winced, like I'd slapped her. "It's not that simple, Jake. It's just. I've been unhappy. And I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't want this to get out of control. But it did. It's out of control now, Emily. You're sleeping with him. You've been seeing him behind my back, lying to me for months. And you thought I wouldn't find out?" She looked away, tears welling up in her eyes. But there was no genuine remorse, no apology. Just the same tired excuses. "I never meant to hurt you," she said quietly, her voice cracking. "I swear." I shook my head, unable to process how quickly everything had shattered. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I'd trusted with my heart and my son, was standing there, giving me a half-assed apology, as if that would fix everything. "I'm done, Emily," I said, my voice cold. "I'm done." Her face twisted in disbelief. "What do you mean? You can't be serious. You're just angry right now. We can work through this." But I was already walking away. I didn't want to hear another word. I couldn't stomach it. That night, Emily slept in our bed. I didn't. I couldn't bring myself to share the same space with her, not after everything I just found out. I stayed in Ethan's room, on the small cot he sometimes used when he was sick, trying to breathe through the knot in my stomach. The silence in the house was suffocating. The next morning, Emily tried to apologize again. She came into Ethan's room, looking like she hadn't slept at all. She was already wearing her "I'm sorry" face, teary-eyed, a little desperate. "Jake," she started, voice shaky, "I don't want this to be the end. I love you. I swear, I do. I made a huge mistake. A huge mistake, but I want to make it right. I don't want to lose our family." Her words were like poison to me. They sounded empty, rehearsed. I couldn't even look at her. "You already lost it, Emily. You lost me the moment you decided he was more important than this family." Her eyes flickered with hurt, but I wasn't moved. I couldn't be. "I'm sorry for what I did," she repeated. "But we can fix this. Please. I'll end things with Ryan, I swear. I can prove to you that you're the only one I want." Her voice had that pleading, almost pleading for dear life tone to it. But I couldn't shake the image of her with him, the texts, the lies. She could end things with Ryan today, but how would I ever know if it wasn't just another lie? I had no trust left for her. "Fix this?" I repeated, my voice hollow. "You can't fix this, Emily. You've broken me. I can't even look at you the same way." She stayed silent after that, her face crumpling with the realization of what she'd done. But I wasn't going to let her guilt trip me into forgiving her. I had spent years investing in this marriage, believing in her, believing in us, and she shattered all of that in a few months. Over the next few days, Emily moved into the guest room. We barely talked, other than when it came to Ethan's needs. The tension in the house was unbearable, like we were both walking around a landmine, just waiting for the other to explode. But what hit me the hardest was the realization that I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't furious. I wasn't screaming or crying. I was just exhausted. I had nothing left to give. I had given her every bit of myself, and in return, she had betrayed me. So, I started thinking about the future. About Ethan. About what life would look like if I stayed, or if I left. The next few days passed in a fog. Emily kept pushing, trying to make me see that we could still fix this. She kept texting me, leaving notes around the house, offering apologies that sounded less sincere every time I heard them. At first, I considered the possibility of trying to repair things, of giving her a chance to prove she could change. But the truth was, the trust was gone. Once it's broken, it's impossible to rebuild, no matter how many heartfelt apologies or promises are made. One night, I sat down with her after Ethan had gone to bed. I needed to make a decision, for my own sake, for Ethan's. Emily was sitting there, her arms crossed, eyes red from crying again. It had been over a week since I found out, but she was still acting like the same version of herself, begging, explaining, acting like I could just forget everything. "I can't do this, Emily," I said quietly, my voice steady but firm. "I can't keep pretending like this is fixable. You broke something in me that I don't think can ever be put back together. And no matter what you say, I'll never be able to trust you again." She opened her mouth to respond, but I raised my hand, signaling for her to stop. "You've been lying to me for months. You've been sneaking around, making me feel like I was crazy when I noticed the changes. I wasn't paranoid, I was being gaslit. And now you want me to just believe you when you say it'll never happen again?" Her face crumpled, but she didn't say anything. She just let the tears fall, her shoulders shaking with the weight of the truth finally sinking in. "I'm leaving," I said, and even though I could hear the crack in my voice, I knew I had made the right choice. "I'm taking Ethan with me. I don't know if we'll ever be able to co-parent peacefully, but I can't keep living in this house, with you." Not anymore. Emily didn't argue. She didn't beg me to stay. She just looked at me, eyes full of sorrow and regret. Jake, I am so sorry. I was selfish, and I messed up. I hurt you, and I'll never forgive myself for that. I'll never forget it either, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The next few weeks were the hardest of my life. I packed up what I could carry, took a few personal belongings, and moved into a small apartment just a few blocks from Emily's place. I kept things civil for Ethan's sake. He deserved to see his parents acting like adults, even if we were no longer a couple. I started seeing a therapist. I needed to understand why I had stayed so long, why I had ignored my gut feeling, why I had allowed myself to get so blinded by the person I thought she was. But therapy helped. Slowly, I started to feel like myself again. I wasn't the angry, betrayed husband anymore. I was just a guy who'd been through a rough chapter and was trying to heal. I focused on Ethan. I made sure he felt loved, safe, and secure. He didn't fully understand what had happened between Emily and me, but he knew something was off. I tried to make him feel like it wasn't his fault, that he was the most important thing in my life, and always would be. As for Emily, she and I barely spoke after the divorce was finalized. She tried reaching out a few times, sending me messages about how much she had learned, how sorry she was. I didn't respond. I couldn't. She wasn't the woman I married anymore. She had made her choices, and now I had to live with mine. A year has passed since I found out about Emily's affair. I'm still angry sometimes, but the pain has dulled, and I've learned to forgive myself for staying in a situation I should have left long before it reached that breaking point. The betrayal still stings, but I'm no longer letting it define me. I learned that love isn't just about trust, it's about respect, communication, and loyalty. Emily had failed me on all those fronts, and I couldn't keep holding on to a ghost of a relationship that was never real in the first place. If I have any advice for anyone reading this, it's to trust your gut. If something feels off, don't wait until it blows up in your face. And don't let someone's words convince you to ignore your instincts. And, above all, don't let anyone treat you like you don't matter. Because you do. Take care, everyone.